people appreciate when they see discussion like this, and we talk our differences, and we can still live in a society in which, with our differences. So if you're a Christian, the natural progression would be to become a Muslim. Cameras should take a note of that.
I've come to listen, not to talk. I suppose that's what I've come, because I find it really interesting. I've just joined it, and I'm not sure what the issue is.
You know, Speaker's Corner discussion, what happens? Do you follow Speaker's Corner discussions, what people do?
I'm just visiting here, and so I just saw it.
So people, of course, discuss a lot of things between themselves, their similarities and differences. I'm a Muslim, so we come here as well, like, let's engage with people and see whether people's misconceptions can be clarified. A lot of people have misconceptions of many things, and Islam being one of them, which is a major misconception people have.
When people can talk, it's always good.
Absolutely. Talking rather than just, not engaging and then have an opinion which is bigoted or inappropriate, that doesn't create a healthy society. But when you talk to people and you iron out your differences, and you can at least at the end of the day say, look, we are happy to disagree. Right? So that is, I think, why Speaker's Corner is providing a platform in which you can have healthy discussions to really look at the differences and where we can have unity among ourselves, and tolerance can build from there.
That's right.
So what do you do? Do you believe in God yourself personally, or
I believe in a God.
what's your concept of God? What's your concept of God?
It's hard to describe.
Is there like a Buddhist tradition, Hindu tradition, Christian, and is that similar kind of traditions there? It's they want everyone to learn from the exchanges at the same time.
And that's
Yeah. So we should, you might feel shy in terms of, like, I don't want to be in the camera, but people appreciate when they see discussion like this, and we talk our differences, and we can still live in a society in which, with our differences.
So this is what I enjoy about it. It's just this debate. It's very handy. It's very healthy. It's great to see.
So you didn't say what traditions you're coming from.
So I think it's the fundamentally Christian tradition, but I've read the Quran, and I've lived in the Middle East, and so I think that thing of people of the book is very important.
So if you're a Christian, the natural progression would be to become a Muslim. Like, for example, if God sent prophets Moses at one point, then the natural progression of the Jewish people would be to follow the prophet who come after him, like Jesus Christ, and then the prophet to come after him will be Prophet Muhammad.
I just don't think it's linear. I don't think it's linear. I understand the argument, and I understand the difficulty of a monotheistic religion, and Christianity has an ambiguity about that. So anyway, it's all interesting. What about you?
Muslim. So that's why I'm asking. Natural progression for a Christian should be like, once you realize that another prophet has come who will now become the universal prophet and the messenger to all of humankind, it's only natural to recognize and accept that messenger as a people of the book, as a Christian.
So you Sunni or Shia?
Sunni.
Where from?
Originally from Bangladesh. How about yourself?
Oh, so from Australia.
From Australia. So when it comes to the belief system of Islam, I'm sure because you lived in a Middle East country, you have read the Quran, you would have understanding that God is someone who doesn't want everyone to believe in anything and everything. He specifically wants people to have the correct faith, and from that correct faith, the righteous actions things to follow from it.
But even Islam has that fragmentation of correct faith, doesn't it?
That's not according to how God wants. God says people divide and make divisions and make Shia between themselves, and He reprimands them for this, and He wants them to be united in the same belief system, believe in the same messenger and the same book, to live your life, because that's where the salvation of every human being lies, rather than simply you make divisions and you create your own faith systems, whether it's a perennial, someone who becomes a perennialist, someone who becomes a particularist, someone who becomes like, what, doesn't matter what you believe, is okay. God doesn't approve of any of that.
Then you have the Wahhabis who believe, in fact, it's important to have the true religion. And then it marginalizes the rest.
So what's the difference between, say, Wahhabism, as you say, and traditional Sunnism? What is the difference?
Interpretation.
So they are more close to the textual understanding of the text, rather than, say, the Sufi traditions in which they try to metaphorically explain it away.
But then the Wahhabis become very intolerant.
No, that's the political dimensions of things. But when it comes to understanding the text and what the text says about God and His messenger, about the Day of Judgment, God's attributes, that is more in line with this, rather than someone trying to interpret it away with their whims and desires.
So
that's why we shouldn't say become a Wahhabi. We say you should return back to the understanding the ways of the Salaf. A Salaf is someone, we say, the pious predecessors, who the first few generations were, and they learned from them. Because what is the best interpretation other than the Quran explaining the Quran and the Quran being explained by the Prophet? You can't have any better interpretation than that. And that's the root of the interpretation of the Salafus Salih. We said our pious predecessors, and we should return back to that model, rather than come to a reformist model in which we say, you know what, we are living in a modern society, we need to reform Islam because Islam cannot align itself with modernity. We don't need to do that, because we see when you go back to the traditional understanding of Islam, society thrives even better, and people come more in line with what God wants us to do, rather than inventing a religion out of it because of your interpretation.
No, but thank you. Thank you. It's a very interesting discussion.
I know it's putting you off. I know it's putting you off. Cameras should take an out of that.
I've come to listen, not to talk. I suppose that's what I've come, because I find it really interesting.
But does it make sense, though, when we talk about Islam being the final message, then one needs to accept the final messenger by really examining, scrutinizing it, and then taking it on board with evidence and proof, rather than blind faith.
Yeah, so I don't see it as evidence and proof based thing. I see it as a spiritual thing.
But isn't evidence important? Otherwise, anyone can believe in anything.
It depends. So I have a legal background, and I have a different view of evidence to you.
Sure.
So I accept, the final prophet, things like that. But I have some sympathy for the Shia, the Sufi tradition.
Yeah.
So
they can return back to the original teaching. So, we say no problem.
But they're comfortable where they are. And I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong. I've no really idea. I've engaged with them. I've seen their practices. It's just lovely. The people who interpret the Quran in their way, and it is an engaging religion. One of the things I look at is, at a time when Christian Europe was persecuting Christians used to go to Islamic countries for protection. And I see that as a very nice thing. So, I look at this and I think that's an attractive aspect of Islam. But
why would the internal differences between the Muslims, become an obstacle for you as a Christian to the natural progression of accepting Islam? Because there's always going to be, do you not agree, there's always going to be people making...
I'm not looking to accept a particular religion. I have a view of God myself, and I'm comfortable with that.
Is God comfortable with your belief?
Well,
you may be comfortable comfortable with a belief system.
So if God's not comfortable with that, then it's not the belief I have. So I have a belief of a beneficent God.
Do you believe in a just God?
Well, again, I'm legally trained, so we would have a different view of just.
Justice is universal.
No, it's not.
Give me an example of a justice which is not universal. I want to learn from your legal background.
Just maybe according to laws.
Give me an example of...
interpreted. Laws are interpreted. So you will have different views. So look, I'm comfortable where I am. I like to listen. I come to listen rather than talk. So thank you very much. It's nice to engage with you.
Sure. I wish we could have continued, but that's fine. I respect your wishes.
Fantastic.
Take care.